It is 5:45. I would like to call the public forum for the Des Moines School Board to order for Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. Ms. Jenkins, can you please take the roll?
Mr. Barron,
Here.
Ms. Bradley,
Here.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson, Mr. Cody,
Here.
Ms. Delagardelle, Ms. Martirano,
Here.
Ms. Sawyer.
We provide speakers at the forum an opportunity to address the board for up to 3 minutes regarding items that are not on the board agenda. If anyone wishes to speak during this forum, please send an email to aaron.jenkins@dmschools.org. Speakers will be called forward individually, and we ask that you please state your name and address prior to providing comments. If you are a student speaker, you do not need to provide your address. Guests of the board are encouraged to speak to matters relating to the program, services, and operations of DMPS. Please remember that Iowa law prohibits us from discussing specific employees or their job performance. Please avoid references to personalities or character attacks, as those types of comments do not contribute to the purpose for which this public forum exists. Thank you for your support of our school district. We appreciate your input. As a reminder to the board and public, this public forum is not a time for board engagement and discussion, as it is our obligation to discuss only matters posted in the public agenda for the sake of transparency and opportunity afforded to all community stakeholders. Matters requiring attention will receive appropriate staff and/or board follow-up at a time after the meeting. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do. Heather Zuckry.
Yes, Zrucky.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. My name's Heather Zarucky. Last name is Zrucky, and I live at 2612 Vista Court in Norwalk. Hi, my name is Heather Zarucky, and I'm a 6th grade science teacher at Hyatt Middle School. Though this is only my 3rd year teaching, I have several years of experience with students and schools, along with in the field science experience. I've worked 18-hour days in the heat of the Alaskan summers, and I've tirelessly worked to support some of the most at-risk youth in the country. But this year, teaching both in-person and virtual students simultaneously has been one of the most taxing and difficult things I've done as a professional. I take my job as a teacher very seriously and do my best to ensure every single student of mine has an equitable chance at learning and growing. However, with the dual modality our middle schools have chosen, that is practically impossible. Between helping in-person students with technology issues, answering questions that the virtual students can't even hear, or having to move closer to the in-person students to hear them because they haven't quite learned to speak louder and more clear with a mask, the students who've chosen the virtual learning model are being shortchanged. Though the majority of my students are currently virtual, with a mix of hybrid and 40% being full-time virtual, I'm not able to give the virtual students the same time and attention and support that my in-person students receive because I physically cannot monitor the chat, listen for students who speak in our meeting, and also support students in the physical classroom. Imagine how frustrating it is to be a virtual student and to ask a question during class only for your teacher to not see it in the chat or not hear it because they're helping an in-person student on the other side of the room. This is an impossible task, yet all the middle school educators are having to do this. We do not have adequate equipment like an extra computer monitor for every teacher or microphone so virtual students can hear in-person questions to be able to properly monitor what's going on in our virtual classroom while projecting lesson content and also teaching in-person kids. Not to mention making sure I'm providing the required IEP and 504 plan accommodations to those students who rightfully need them. It is not doable if we expect our students to learn and grow. It's not possible to effectively teach in-person and virtual students at the same time and expect that our students are actually acquiring knowledge that we are hoping they do. If you have not observed a dual modality class since we've been in session since September, I strongly urge you to do so. This can be done safely, virtually, so you can see what it's like to be a virtual student. Therefore, I'm asking the board to seriously consider directing the middle schools to split the in-person students and virtual students into separate cohorts so teachers can direct 100% of their class time to one learning modality. This is what's best for our teachers, and it's definitely what's best for our students. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Nicole Cable.
Good evening. I'm Nicole Cable. My address is 1140 19th Street in West Des Moines. I'm the school nurse at Roosevelt and a parent of 2 within the district. I was a little bit surprised to see that COVID and metrics and instructional model were not on the agenda for tonight. So that's why I'm speaking in the public forum. I do feel like we owe both parents and staff a little bit more transparency and straight talk, given that when we passed a 15% mark on 1.7, that was the first time when we've been over 15% that we have not sought a waiver. Although I understand some of the reasons why we probably chose not to do that, it doesn't change the fact that it marks a change in strategy for us, and we need to be speaking clearly about why behind that so that people are informed about what is going on. Our numbers, isolation and quarantine numbers continue to be a meaningful metric, but please remember they are just one metric. And as we move further into this, we're going to start to see more and more people affected by other things, whether that's household quarantine or people who have been identified as close contacts but don't need to quarantine because of mask use. We currently benefit from a combination of mitigation measures in both our distancing and our mask use. But I would like to be a little bit more clear when we look at our mask use in our school, and especially as I look at our mask use when we have been walking around the high school for the last 2 weeks, we don't look any better than you see at Target or Walmart or Hy-Vee. There are an awful lot of noses peeking out, masks that are too big, people that let it fall down and don't pick it back up. If we have distancing in place, then we are able to not have to quarantine those people, because the first thing about determining a close contact is, are you closer than 6 feet? But if we change instructional model, whether that's by our choice or by the governor choosing it for us with new legislation, we'll lose the 6 feet distancing, and we suddenly will be in the boat where we need to quarantine many more people because the mask use is not very good. The other thing I would say that I am concerned about is the CDC has recently spent quite a bit more time talking about the new variant that's out there. There are several, in fact, but B.1.1.7 or the UK variant is the one of most concern. In their publication last Friday, they noted that the new variant warrants universal and increased compliance with mitigation strategies, including distance and masking. So we really need to hold on to the distancing afforded to us by hybrid model for as long as we're able to do that. Although vaccinations will be coming our way, that will continue to be slow, as they talked about today on Polk County's emergency management call. We continue to have a just-in-time supply chain. So vaccination really isn't going to bring us a lot of relief. The last thing I would say as we consider instructional model is this: when we surveyed families, and I say this as a parent now, about semester 2, we were very clear that in-person could be hybrid or could be something more than hybrid. I know as there's talk about what we will end up doing going forward based on our choices or the governor's, that we may want to survey again, but we really created the survey in a way that allowed families to know what they were choosing. And in some respects, resurveying for yet another time throws our systems into chaos. So I encourage you not to do it and instead focus on how we will provide good instruction, whether that's via hybrid, whether that's via virtual, whether it's via in-person, and also to those students who are not able to attend in person suddenly because of isolation and quarantine. Thank you.
Natalie Ramirez.
Hello, my name is Natalie Ramirez, and I live at 400 3rd Street in West Des Moines. I am not an educator or a nurse. I'm just a parent and a mental health professional. My son is in fifth grade, at Park Avenue. Seems like 4th grade kind of flew by us, at Park Avenue Elementary, and he is currently in the hybrid learning model. My son was going to speak. Unfortunately, he is in therapy right now, as we have had to put him in extra therapy due to his mental health. He wasn't talented and gifted for multiple subjects. He is now falling behind. He is up every single night with worry and concern about how he's going to do in school. Is he going to fail school? Is he even going to make it to junior high? Because he does not have the knowledge or the skills that he needs right now. My son is an incredibly intelligent human being. I have no doubt that he is very, very capable, but he cannot do this alone. I'm a working mom. I'm a single working mom. I've been working my butt off for years to make sure that my son can do the things that he wants and needs to do. And the bare minimum right now is his education, and he's not receiving even the bare minimum. No Child Left Behind has completely left the table, and I feel unfortunately now, not just on behalf of my own son, but he wanted to speak on behalf of his friend who is 9 years old and attempted to commit suicide. He wanted to let you guys know that these children are not okay, that the consistency and the routine and their mental health is so much more important right now, and that every parent has the ability to make the decision to quarantine their child away from people that are at risk. You need to allow parents to have more decision making for this process. I think that getting rid of the surveys would be completely the opposite of what you need to do. I actually was going to suggest more intensive surveys, and I was also going to suggest, I had emailed the superintendent's office and never did receive a response, wondering why the Des Moines schools metrics were no longer on the Polk County website, on the IDPH website dashboard, and I never received a response. My assumption is that because school was not in session. However, I have yet to see kind of the schools divided up for positive cases and things like that. I think it would be a really good idea to consider, looking at each school separately, assessing the staff. My son's class has 7 students. I really have a hard time believing that that is not able to be socially distanced, and why can't he be there 5 days a week? 2 days is just not enough. Every night that he gets home from school, he's up until 2. Last night he was up from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. with worry about how he did on his homework. So, and again, I'm unfortunately not an educator. I am a mental health professional, and I work with children
30
with autism.
seconds.
So again, I urge that please listen to the children. They may not be here to speak for themselves, but I think that what you're going to see when they return is a lot of children very, very behind. And I really do think that it is incredibly important that you consider what's better for the children's mental health at this time, and how to make sure that their education that they are very much entitled to is still being provided to them in the way that it is supposed to be, based on everything that we've always known our whole lives. The reason you became educators, I'm sure, is so that you could provide this education and make sure that these children have the future that they deserve.
Time.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.
Thank you. Sean K.
Hi, I'm Sean Kaloje. Don't worry about the last name. I live at 3129 26th Street. I am in my 4th year as an educator here at Des Moines Public Schools. I teach in the east side of Hoyt Middle School. I was going to speak to something that Heather had also spoken on, so thank you, Heather. I appreciate your message. It was well spoken and well put. But as a middle school teacher in our current setting with the hybrid, I was just going to add to the fact that it is tough to teach kids both online and in person at the same time. There are a lot of kids who are in the virtual setting who, with everything considered, we are definitely leaving behind due to the facts that Heather also brought up, the fact that it is hard to pay attention to both your chat, what kids are saying, the kids in your classroom moving around the room to try to help, but also keeping yourself distant to keep yourself safe, as well as their safety. It's becoming a thing that's gotten more and more difficult. And I think that depending on where you might be, you might see some attendance reflecting that as well. Kids either choosing to stay home because they don't think that the in-person option is helping them as much as they like it because they want more attention, or kids choosing to stay virtual because they just don't see the point in coming at this point. And it's disheartening, and it hurts as an educator to see that for our kids. Overall, it's easy to miss things in this setting, and I believe that it's important that we start to pick back up and figure out what would be beneficial for our middle school educators as well as our middle school students. I feel like they've gotten lumped to the side, seeing that maybe some people have just thought of it as middle school, but it is an important time. It's a time to get them prepared for things and start really developing some extra strengths for their education in the future. I will not take any more of the time. I'll yield the rest of my time. That is my point. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And we do not have any more speakers.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. I would like to thank everyone who spoke this evening for providing your input. We will make sure that the appropriate staff members will get back to you with your concerns. I will now close the public forum, and the regular school board meeting will reconvene in just a few moments as soon as we get reset. All right, it is after 6 p.m. I would like to call the school board meeting for Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 for Des Moines Public Schools to order. Ms. Jenkins, can you please take the roll?
Mr. Barron,
Here.
Ms. Bradley,
Here.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Cody,
Here.
Ms. Delagardelle, Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
Here.
The first item of business is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Caldwell
Sawyer, so
Johnson,
moved.
move approval.
Sawyer, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Caldwell Johnson and a second by Sawyer. Please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano,
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our special meeting on December 30th, 2020. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
This is Barron, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Martirano and a second by Mr. Barron. Please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano,
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from a special meeting on Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Move approval Caldwell Johnson.
Cody, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Caldwell Johnson and a second by Mr. Cody. Please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Abstain.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano,
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 5 and with one abstaining. The next item on the agenda is the consent items. We allow any person the opportunity to speak to the board for up to 5 minutes following the presentation of an agenda item. If anyone wishes to speak to an agenda item, please email aaron.jenkins@dmschools.org. Remarks must be germane to the agenda, and we ask that you avoid reference to personalities and character attacks, as those types of comments serve no productive purpose. We appreciate your input. As a reminder to the board and public, the board will not engage in discussion or deliberation with a speaker regarding comments made to the agenda items. Discussion and deliberation will remain among board members at the board table, with speakers' comments informing said discussion, deliberation, and determinations as deemed necessary. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
No, we do not.
Okay, Mr. Cody, I believe you have the consent motion.
I do. I move that the board approve the consent items in accordance with the recommended action for each item on the consent agenda, including bills previously authorized, certified, and approved for payment by the board secretary in the amount of $3,613,009.42, and procurement card transactions in the amount of $253,923.63.
And do we have a second?
Caldwell Johnson, second.
We have a motion by Mr. Cody and a second by Ms. Caldwell Johnson. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano,
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The consent items are approved 6-0. Next, we will have a public hearing. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D1, public hearing for the sale of Mann Education Center? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
I do not have anybody signed up, no.
Hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board hold a public hearing and approve the sale of Mann Education Center, 1000 Wade Street, to Joshua Christian Academy Incorporated in the amount of $1,500,000 following the public hearing.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Second, Barron.
We have a motion by Ms. Martirano and a second by Mr. Barron. Any questions or discussion? Please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, we have another public hearing. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D2, public hearing for HVAC upgrades to Brubaker Elementary and Hoyt Middle School? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Modus Engineering for HVAC upgrades to Brubaker Elementary and Hoyt Middle School, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
This is Mr. Barron. I move approval.
Cody, second.
Sawyer.
We have a motion by Mr. Barron and a second by Mr. Cody. Are there any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano,
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, we have another public hearing. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D3, public hearing HVAC and flooring upgrades to Garton and Hannawalt Elementary Schools? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
No, we do not.
Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by KCL Engineering for HVAC and flooring upgrades to Garton and Hannawalt Elementary Schools, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Sawyer, so moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Sawyer and a second by Ms. Martirano. Are there any discussions or questions? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, public hearing D4. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D4, public hearing for HVAC upgrades to Hillis and Morris Elementary Schools? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, would you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Modus Engineering for HVAC upgrades to Hillis and Morris Elementary Schools, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Barron, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Martirano and a second by Mr. Barron. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano,
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, public hearing D5. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D5, public hearing for HVAC upgrades to King and Samuelson Elementary Schools? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by KCL Engineering for HVAC upgrades to King and Samuelson Elementary Schools, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Cody, move approval.
Barron, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cody and a second by Mr. Barron. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano,
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, public hearing D6. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D6? Public hearing, the HVAC upgrades to Central Campus Auditorium. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, would you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by KCL Engineering for HVAC upgrades to the Central Campus Auditorium and Power Plant, hold a public hearing and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and the superintendent's recommendation?
Sawyer moved,
We have a motion by Ms. Sawyer and a second by Ms. Martorano. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
yes,
Ms. Martorano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, public hearing D7. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D7, public hearing for main cooling and electrical equipment upgrades to Central Academy? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by KCL Engineering for main cooling and electrical equipment upgrades to Central Academy, hold a public hearing and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Sawyer second,
We have a motion by Ms. Martorano and a second by Ms. Sawyer. Are there any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
yes,
Ms. Martorano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, public hearing D8. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D8, public hearing HVAC and refrigeration upgrades to the Central Nutrition Center? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Modas Engineering for HVAC and refrigeration upgrades to the Central Nutrition Center, hold a public hearing and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Barron, move approval.
Cody second,
We have a motion by Mr. Barron and a second by Ms. Martorano. Are there any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
yes,
Ms. Martorano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, public hearing D9. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D9, public hearing for restrooms upgrades to Jackson, Morris, Willard, and Weeks schools? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Hala Architecture for restroom upgrades to Jackson, Morris, Willard, and Weeks schools, hold a public hearing and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
move approval Caldwell Johnson,
second, Sawyer,
We have a motion by Ms. Caldwell Johnson and a second by Ms. Sawyer. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
yes,
Ms. Martorano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, public hearing D10. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D10, public hearing for restroom upgrades to Perkins, Phillips, Windsor, and Merrill schools? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by RMH Architecture for restroom upgrades to Perkins, Phillips, Windsor, and Merrill schools, hold a public hearing and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Barron, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Martorano and a second by Mr. Barron. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next public hearing, D11. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D11? Public hearing for restroom upgrades to East High School and Harding Middle Schools. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
No, we do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by RMH Architecture for restroom upgrades to East High and Harding Middle School, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and the superintendent's recommendation?
Barron, move approval.
Sawyer,
Cody,
second.
We have a motion by Mr. Barron and a second by Ms. Sawyer. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next public hearing, D12. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D12, public hearing for locker room upgrades to Cooper High School? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
No, we do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by RMH Architecture for locker room upgrades to Hoover High School, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Barron, move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Barron and a second by Ms. Martirano. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
Vote is approved 6-0. Next public hearing, D13. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to item 13, public hearing for restroom upgrades to Lincoln High School and Callahan Middle School? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by RMH Architecture for restroom upgrades to Lincoln High and Callahan Middle Schools, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Sawyer, so moved.
Barron, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Sawyer and a second by Mr. Barron. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
Yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next public hearing, D14. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D14, public hearing for construction of the DMPS Community Stadium at Drake University? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by RDG Planning and Design for the construction of the DMPS Community Stadium at Drake University, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and the superintendent's recommendation?
Move approval. Barron.
Cody, second.
We have a motion by Mr. Barron and a second by Mr. Cody. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next public hearing, D15. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D15, public hearing for providing a walk-in cooler and freezer at Moulton Elementary School? Ms. Jenkins, do you have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Studio Melee Architects for the purchase and installation of walk-in cooler and freezer at Moulton Elementary, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and the superintendent's recommendation?
Sawyer, so moved.
Caldwell Johnson, second,
I've got a motion by Ms. Sawyer and a second by Caldwell Johnson. Are there any discussion or questions? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next, public hearing D16. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D16? Public hearing for flooring upgrades to Weeks and Callahan Middle Schools. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
No, we do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, will you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Studio Melee Architects for the flooring upgrades at Weeks and Callahan Middle Schools, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Caldwell Johnson move,
Sawyer second,
We have a motion by Ms. Caldwell Johnson and a second by Ms. Sawyer. Any questions or discussions? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
yes,
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Our final public hearing of the evening, public hearing D17. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item D17, public hearing for flooring upgrades to East and North High School? Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers?
We do not.
Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Superintendent Ahart, please introduce the matter.
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Studio Melee Architects for flooring upgrades at East and North High Schools, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Barron second,
We have a motion by Ms. Martirano, a second by Mr. Barron. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Jenkins, please take the vote.
Mr. Barron,
yes,
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
yes,
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
yes,
The vote is approved 6-0. Next on our agenda, we have other items. The next item on our agenda is one comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. Superintendent Earhart, will you introduce the matter?
Yes, this is an annual event for us, but it's happening at a little bit of a different time this year because of some delays under which we had no control, related mostly to CARES Act funding that we received prior to the end of the fiscal year. I'll ask Mr. Aurora if he has comments that he'd like to share to sort of frame this for the board.
Sure, thank you, Dr. Ahart. We have Kevin from RSM who will be sharing a presentation. If Kevin, you can proceed, or I can share your presentation if you want to.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay, let me pull it up. Let's see. Do you see that?
Yes,
yes.
we can.
Okay, perfect. Do you have anything further, Shashank, or should I go ahead?
Please proceed, Kevin.
Okay. Well, good evening, members of the board. We're here to present the results from the fiscal year 2020 audit. We have met with the district's audit committee and gone through the report and the audit results in detail. And so today will just be kind of a high level overview of the results, but happy to answer any questions that any of you might have as well. First off, this slide here just talks about what we were engaged to do. We were to perform an audit in accordance with government auditing standards. We did issue an unmodified or a clean opinion on the district's financial statements. So that is the highest level of assurance that you can receive as a part of an external audit. In the comprehensive annual financial report that you have, there were no new GASB standards adopted this year, so nothing new to bring your attention to from that standpoint. In addition to the financial statements, there was also a letter in there that outlined some things related to the audit. One of those just talks about significant accounting estimates. Here on the screen, it just lists out some of those estimates that you see in the financial statements. The most significant of which, the actuarial assumptions related to the pension plans that the district participates in, both IPERS and DMPRS. because that is about a $200 million liability in the financial statements. We do take a close look at those. We have our actuaries review those assumptions that are being used and did determine that everything that was being used was reasonable, and also tested some of those other estimates as well. I just wanted to bring up the pension one because that is the most significant. Some other results from the audit, we did not have to propose any audit adjustments during the audit. There were a few uncorrected misstatements that were deemed not to be material. Those are outlined in the representation letter, and also those were discussed with the audit committee as well. But overall, no disagreements with management, no difficulties performing the audit. We did perform the audit pretty much 100% virtual this year, so it looked different than it has in the past, but still in doing so, we didn't have any issues getting access to information or employees as we performed the audit. And there were a lot of new staff as well in the business office, and so I want to commend all of those individuals as well for keeping the audit moving and allowing us to perform our audit efficiently, because a lot of those individuals were new to the process this year. But nothing else new or unusual to bring to your attention from as it relates to the financial statements. The remainder of our audit is focused around federal grant compliance and performing the single audit, which is in the back of the comprehensive annual financial report. There's a whole section on compliance. The first talks about internal controls over financial reporting, and there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses issued as it relates to our audit over internal controls over financial reporting. From a compliance standpoint, for the single audit, we tested 3 federal programs in 2020, the child nutrition grants, Head Start, and then the new CARES Act funding, the ESSER funds that were received by the district this year. And as Dr. Ahart mentioned, that was the holdup. The federal government didn't issue the guidance specific to how we need to audit those programs until a couple days before Christmas. So normally we get this issued in November, but unfortunately this year we had to wait until January. But we did audit those new funds and had no issues, and there were no findings within that program or any of the other federal programs that we audited. So we did look at about 52% of the district's total federal expenditures in 2020. And then briefly, this next slide here, this just provides you a history of the results of the compliance audit. There's a lot of, in the past few years, there haven't been any findings, and I just wanted to point that out, that does help keep the cost of the district's audit down, because if you do have findings, you cannot be a low risk auditee anymore for single audit purposes, and so the district does remain to be low risk. And as a result, we don't have to test quite as much as we would have if you were not a low risk auditee. So, and then just pointing out kind of how many major programs we test each year. And so that concludes the formal presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Mr. Smith, before we open it up for questions, I would like to get a motion and a second to approve item E1, and then after that is done, we'll open it up for discussion or questions. So may I have a motion and a second to approve item E1?
Sawyer, so moved.
Barron, second.
We have a motion by Ms. Sawyer and a second by Mr. Barron. Are there any discussion or any questions?
I just want to pipe up real quickly as the board representative on the audit committee that this, was just another smooth process. It was challenging because I think the work started on time, but dragged for several months until they could get the guidance they needed to finish the ESSER funds audit. But this, this is becoming routine for us to have clean audits, and it speaks really well of the district, but it shouldn't be taken for granted because it's so routine for a district this large with a $600 million budget to return clean audits is commendable. And I also want to recognize the audit committee because, you know, time and time again, the volunteers on that committee have great discussions on these audits. Kevin and his team are knowledgeable, responsive, diligent, just everything that we want. And it's, you know, it's why I tell people and will tell people with a hand on a Bible that the audit committee is the best committee to serve on.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Are there any other questions or discussion?
I just have one that I hope is quick. Those 3 federal programs that you looked into, how are they chosen?
There's guidance on how we choose our major programs. And so most of your large programs that are significant, so over $1 million or so, are tested at least every 3 years. So if a large program goes 2 years without being tested, it's required to be tested in that 3rd year. And so it's on a rotational basis unless there's something within it that triggers it to be higher risk, and then we would have to pick that as well. So those 3 were picked just because they were due to be audited. And then we also have to audit at least 20% of the expenditures because you're a low risk auditee. If you were high risk, we'd have to test 40%. We got plenty of coverage this year just because of the size of some of the programs we tested.
Thank you, Mr. Cody, for your question. Board colleagues, do you have any more questions?
I did have one just simple question procedurally. So I'm really excited that we still are able to maintain the single audit, but I guess my question is, at what point would we be considered for something other than that? In other words, what's the threshold? You showed that chart where we, you know, we're really low in our overall findings, but what is the threshold?
There's certain things if you make if you file your reports timely with the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, that's one thing you have to do every year in order to maintain that that risk status. And then if there were any material weaknesses, internal controls over finance reporting or over compliance, you would be triggered to be high risk for 2 years. And then also if there were any findings with question costs over federal grant, that you would also be triggered to be high risk.
Mm-hmm. So it really has nothing whatsoever to do with the size of the budget. As long as you meet certain criteria, meet your deadlines, and don't have any significant findings, really the size of the budget has nothing whatsoever to do with it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are there any other questions?
Ms. Bradley, I would just like to recognize, you know, Mr. Barron recognized that this has sort of felt routine for us, and we've had a lot of transition in the business and finance team over the last year. We have a new CFO, Mr. Aurora, and new controller, a new business manager. We've had a whole series of retirements and transitions on that team over the course of this year, not to mention the challenges that come with a new funding source like the ESSER funds. And so I'm particularly proud of the work of this team this year, and want to thank Mr. Aurora and his team for soldiering through a lot of challenges over the course of the last year and a half to come out with a clean audit, and also recognize the efforts of Kevin. He's just been a really good to work with and a really good critical eye for us as we move forward.
Thank you, Superintendent Ahart. Hearing that we have no other further questions, Ms. Jenkins, will you please take the vote?
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Cody,
Yes.
Ms. Martirano, Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
The vote is approved 6-0. The next item on our agenda is E2, update on management of limitations 2.11. I will say before we go further with this, there will be no action on this tonight. I will start with Superintendent Ahart.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. A couple of things. This looks obviously similar to the last several reports you've gotten with sharing the same data. I did add some additional information to the back, but I did want to call out on page I apologize. I should have had these pages numbered, but the data on percentage of students with a at least one D or F, and just make a couple of comments. Because of standards referenced grading, we don't really have an accurate picture of what the final count will be until the end of the semester, which is still yet to come. So I do expect in the next report these numbers to look different than they are in this report to the good. But I also wanted to recognize the efforts of Jason Allen, Mike Vukovic, and Sarah Doherty, who put in considerable time and energy persuading the Boys Athletic Association and the Girls Athletics Union to allow for students who received an incomplete, because if the board remembers, we will be giving an incomplete to students with a D or F as their what would normally be their final grade at the end of this first semester, to give them a chance to, because of the challenges with COVID, to build that grade up to a higher level of mastery. And so we will be issuing a number of incompletes, and that's not going to prohibit our students from participating in extracurricular activities during the winter season. So we recognized that early, and that team really did a really good job of proactively addressing that and doing something that's usually pretty difficult to do, and getting a temporary change on what is a pretty standard rule for the girls and boys athletic associations. Lastly, if you'd look at the few comments I made at the end of the report, we are currently serving students in two modalities: the fully remote or 100% virtual, and in a compliant with the state hybrid in-person model. So the concern about a gap in instructional time based on that 50% rule that the state issued this past summer has been stemmed. We are actively working with the Department of Education on having a plan to come into compliance with the out of compliance issue. And the deadline for a response to the Department of Education is February 1st. My goal is to have that completely rectified prior to that time. And we're making some good progress on that, and I'll have more detail to share with you at least by the time of the next meeting. As everyone is aware, I believe the governor and legislators have been talking about a required transition to a 5 days a week in-person instructional model for students not selecting the fully remote model. That transition will take a bit of time, so we're designing how we begin the second semester at all three levels to make that transition more smoothly in the event that we need to do that when conditions allow or rules require it. We will not be, however, going out to our community to resurvey what their selection will be in terms of opting into or out of fully virtual, because we're really stretched to the limit, and each of those decisions will be made on a case-by-case basis. So what we'll be asking families who want to make a change is to contact their school. Their school will problem solve with them. If they're unable to solve the problem, then we'll engage with the next level up to see if we can solve it by a combination of resources from more than one school. But families were notified at the time that they made their selection for second semester that in-person would mean whatever in-person modality we happened to be in at that time. We are continuing to press Polk County and some of our hospital systems to attempt to accelerate access to a COVID-19 vaccine. I don't have anything, unfortunately, concrete to report, but we're pulling ideas from districts who have worked out creative agreements around the country and continue to offer different ideas to Polk County Health and Iowa Department of Public Health with the goal of getting as many of our staff vaccinated as quickly as possible so we can reduce risk and get back to closer to normal as soon as we're able. And I think that's all I have on that, Ms. Bradley.
Thank you, Dr. Ahart. Are there any, one thing, Dr. Ahart, could you just talk to the board? I know that we get these reports pretty close to our meetings. Could you just talk about the rationale and just kind of holding off on the reports until pretty close to the meeting?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. If you'll note, the date at the top of the report says January 19th. That's today. But if you'll note down at the bottom page, it says data pulled 1/18/2020 at 3:30 p.m. What we're attempting to do is give you as close to real-time data as possible, and so if we post it a week in advance, the board is missing out on a week's worth of data. So we can certainly change that if that's the will of the board, but the thinking has been, let's give as accurate and timely data as we can, and since the nature of these reports is data points that are ongoing and measured on a regular basis, we thought this would be a more accurate way to report that information.
Dr. Ahart and board colleagues, I would say if that's something that you'd like to give some input on, if you could just send me an email about that. If you're feeling like you wanted something a little bit more ahead of time, so I know Dr. Ahart would do. My board colleagues have some questions pertaining to the information that Dr. Ahart has shared with us this evening.
I have a question.
Okay, I mute myself a lot, so I took one of these out of my ears, so I apologize. Go ahead, Marjorie.
I'm curious how for the team.
You know what, Ms. Martirano, I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. I don't.
Is this better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. I'm curious, the team of people that you have brought together to discuss a plan for that February 1st deadline for DE coming into compliance. What or who is sitting on that team? Is it just district representation? Do we have teachers on the team? Do we have parents? What do those conversations look like? I know that you are discussing very innovative ways to make up this time, and curious what that looks like.
Dr. Ahart, I hate to interrupt you. Ms. Martirano, could you repeat that question? Ms. Caldwell-Johnson couldn't hear you, so could you repeat your question, please?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Barely.
Barely. I don't know how to fix this.
I'll listen more intently.
I can repeat it, and Ms. Martirano, if you want to correct me if I mischaracterize your question. The question had to do with who was involved in the creation of a plan to make up the instructional time that the Department of Education says that we're in arrears on. So we had a group of folks that involved the representatives of the Teachers Association, as well as various departments, including transportation and Office of Schools and Teaching and Learning, obviously. And first, we prior to that, gathering that group, we sort of brainstormed some ideas. Some we had to throw out because they just weren't executable. And we soon realized once we got the numbers back from the Department of Education at the very end of December, and the difference in the hours of gaps between elementary, middle, and high school, that it was probably going to take some combination of strategies. So that's a group, and I can't tell you exactly how many, but somewhere in the neighborhood of a dozen folks, and with a rough draft, basically. And now we're going out to building leadership teams to have them vet it to see, number one, if they think that's something that we can execute, and number two, to give us additional ideas if they have them and ways to further refine the plan. So we've shopped the basic concepts, and there's really 4 different strategies to be used with the Department of Education's legal counsel, and so far it looks like that's going to work. I do want to note, however, that part of our thinking is to avoid having to make up. I'm sorry, to have to make up as little time as possible in the summer months. The department will require anything that we do to be concluded by the end of June, and we really don't want our hands tied in the summer with any regulations that would limit our ability to really focus our summer programming on accelerating progress on the SMART goals. And we also know that, and the department recognizes this, that we may not compel students to participate in summer programming once the school year ends. So part of the hope is that many more of our students will participate in these additional hours if they are included as part of the regular school year. That was maybe a little bit of a long answer, but.
Thank you, Dr. Ahart. Are there any other questions from my board colleagues?
Oh, Miss.
I have one. Well, I guess it's kind of a combination too. I was just wondering, are we still working with Dr. Schaefer to get some reports on conditions on the ground? And then the second part is, will we have access to her soon? I've got some questions I've been meaning to ask.
Yeah, we can have access to her, to Dr. Schaefer whenever the board chooses. We'll just have to coordinate that with her. And she may have sent something late last night, but I've not seen it yet, and I'll forward that to the board as soon as I see that.
And I would also like to just add that too, we can reach out to Dr. Schaefer as needed, so I could get her contact information, and we can send emails to her too, Mr. Cody. So if the board doesn't have the appetite to maybe have Dr. Schaefer come in, but if you have some personal questions that you would like to ask for Mr. Cody, I can get some information so that you're able to do so.
Thank you, that'd be good.
Okay. Ms. Caldwell-Johnson?
Yeah, I did have a question. I want to go back to a couple of the comments that Dr. Ahart mentioned at the end of the 2.11 report relative to vaccinations and how quickly we think we'll be able to ramp up for teachers. I don't know why, but I thought that there was some indication that teachers and folks in the classroom, including early childhood, might be in this next round and getting close. Has anyone else heard that?
Yeah, I have heard that, Ms. Caldwell-Johnson. The issue, though, as we understand it right now, is that the supply is not going to keep up with the timeline that the state has put on those different tiers. So that's the issue. There's also the issue, and I'm not sure where the state lands on this, but of either moving forward with injecting all of the doses that they get their hands on, or reserving half to ensure that those who got the first who got part 1 of the vaccination also get part 2 of the vaccination within the required time frame. Mm-hmm. So we don't have we were on, from a policy perspective, in theory, moved up. Educators were moved up in the priority list, but but that doesn't sound like it necessarily means that we're significantly closer to actually getting the vaccine in people's arms.
Gotcha. So I think that question is a perfect segue to the transition to 5-day-a-week in-person instruction. And as best I think we all can tell, there will be a push in the legislature for that to happen, likely sooner than later, based on the governor's State of the State address and her request for the legislature to get something on her desk sooner versus later. And I guess my question to you, Dr. Ahart, is given the fact that it takes about 2 weeks to ramp up, do we have any sense that when the state says it's time to go, there will be some latitude given for districts to make ready for that return to 5-day-a-week in-person instruction? I ask that because, as we all know, we've got some challenges already with meeting the requirements for the period of time that we were out of compliance. And I want to make sure that we don't create a situation for ourselves where we're further behind the 8 ball if in fact there's not a window of time given to make that transition, and if we're not in a position to do it in a way that doesn't put us out of non-compliance, which then creates a larger window for us to have to meet relative to the state. So I'm just really trying to better anticipate how we make ready and what we need to do so that when it's time for the trigger to be pulled and the state says go, we're in a position to do so. So can you maybe provide a bit more information along those lines, please?
Yeah, so we've been working on being ready for a transition to 5 days a week and have made adjustments to how we're going to open second semester such that it won't be a big disruption to transition to 5 days a week in the event that we have to transfer to that. The biggest need for us in terms of a transition really has to do directly with transportation and specifically with DART, because they do need some advance time to adjust their routes and their driver schedules. They've been tremendously cooperative with us, and they know that this is coming. So we're doing everything we can to be ready, and we do anticipate that there will be some window of transition from the time that they sign the bill into law and when it needs to be implemented. Of course, we won't know anything for certain until we actually see the final version of the bill, but that's what's anticipated by folks that we talk to on both sides of the legislature.
Yeah, that's helpful. I appreciate that explanation, Dr. Ahart, because I would want nothing more than for us not to be ready when they say go, because of course we know we already have created some challenges for ourselves relative to meeting instructional time and instructional days for this school year. So I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to our information only items, I'd like to read a statement. I've gotten several emails from some teachers and some community members just asking some questions, and the fact that we have been over our 15% in our decisions to not move forward. So I would like to address that if my board colleagues would allow me to, just for a moment before we move into our information only. In December, the board voted to allow Dr. Ahart to continue to file waivers as needed when the metric stated he needed to do so. I also stated that if any waivers were denied, we would meet as a board to vote on next steps. At the end of December, the board met due to receiving the dial by the state, and we needed to decide how to move forward. The vote was for school to start with a hybrid option on January 4th for all grades. A week later, the positivity rate was over 15%. At this time, the superintendent was interested in filing a waiver as we had given the direction to do so. But at the advice of myself and my vice chair, we requested Dr. Ahart not to move forward with another request. And this was done for 2 reasons. One, we knew legislation was being created to provide families with an option of 100% in person 5 days a week. And we believed that another waiver request would be denied knowing how the state felt about in-person learning. As of right now, we will continue to monitor the situation, but we fully anticipate the governor will have legislation that will make it law for districts to offer families the option for 100% in-person learning 5 days a week. We will continue to keep the current modality we have until this becomes law. In the meantime, we will continue to request the vaccinations be given to staff sooner than the February 1st date. In reflection, this hasn't been the easiest process for anyone. There are many feelings that have been felt by our community, teachers, and our board. We've created metrics that some have felt haven't been followed, and I know this is an area that has caused some to feel and question how we move forward when trust may have been broken. There isn't an answer I could give that would be satisfactory, except we have done what we have felt is best, looking beyond metrics and the current reality. The board appreciates every single staff person in this district. We thank you for continuing to work hard, whether it's been in person, virtual, or doing both. I do believe there is a light at the end of this tunnel. We all may have varying opinions, but the one thing we all can agree on is that we will continue to work at the highest level to make sure we are setting our students up for success in the next stages of their lives. Thank you again for all you do, and thank you to my board colleagues for the time you have given to make the hard decisions. We will now move to our information only items. These items are for information only. You have a notification of award of competitive quotes. Now we will move on to items of privilege. Do I have any board colleagues that have any comments to share?
Yes, I do.
So,
So the Community Legislative Action Team has, I know it's been sponsoring the monthly coffees, but this month, last Thursday, they sponsored a letter writing campaign for an opportunity for the public to learn more about writing letters to your legislators and encouraging those messages. So they are going to host another one on Saturday, January 30th at 9 o'clock. And you can find more information on the Facebook page, DMPS Community Legislative Action Team. Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Sawyer. Anyone else? I would like to go ahead.
Madam Chair,
Uh-huh.
sorry. I want to apologize to my board colleagues for not personally being at the meeting in person this evening. I got caught up in a work-related call this evening that ended up going longer and extended beyond even the public forum. And I sent text messages to the chair and vice chair indicating that for tonight only, I would be joining remotely. So I wanted to just make sure that I was on record as to the reason why I was joining remotely, that you can count on my in-person attendance for meetings moving forward. And thank you for the indulgence tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell-Johnson. Before I turn it over to Dr. Ahart, I would just like to express my sincere condolences to the family of Majak, Emmanuel, and Zachariah. We lost some amazing individuals, and I just also want to send my condolences to staff who have worked with these young men, also to my board colleague, Ms. Caldwell-Johnson, and Homes of Oak Ridge, in the loss that you have endured. I hope that you all can find peace during this time, for I know that this has been an unimaginable event. And I hope that for many educators, I know that when we go into this work, we don't go into work thinking that we will lose students. And when we do, it can be something that is very devastating. But I hope at this time you'll be able to find the peace that you need, but know that everything that you do matters and that you will continue to do the great work that you all do, making an impact on our students' lives. Dr. Ahart, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. We have been through an exceedingly challenging 10 months. Many of us have suffered from COVID-19 and the loss of family members and friends from the virus. Our schools are so important to the health and vitality of our community. That has always been the case and is arguably even more so the case during the pandemic. COVID-19 has only brought to light and exacerbated the many already existing inequities that our staff fight each day. Despite these conditions, our children are not broken. They do not need to be fixed. Our students may not be spending as much time focusing on traditional school in the traditional way, but their brains, as a colleague of mine has said, have not been in hibernation. They have been helping their families and one another survive the worst pandemic in 10 generations and all of the unanticipated challenges that come with it. They have been learning new lessons about community right along with us. I know that we are tired. Our students are tired. Our parents are tired. Our staff are tired. Our board is tired. We did not anticipate this pandemic staying around so forcefully for so long. In the meantime, there have been many factors outside of our control that have made serving our students and families extraordinarily and sometimes unnecessarily challenging. I want to recognize the grace demonstrated by our students and families and the dogged persistence and hard work of our entire staff in the face of unrelenting and unprecedented public health and political challenges. I am the leader of this organization. This is a responsibility I carry with me 24 hours a day. I take it very seriously. I'm passionate about our students and staff and this community that we all love. Leadership, unfortunately, is not about being liked, and I have learned that oftentimes the hardest things and the right things are the same, and so it is with messages. So as much as you don't want to hear this, and as much as I don't want to say it, I'm going to deliver more bad news. We are far from being out of the woods. While we continue to push for access to the vaccine, 2 new variants of COVID-19, one first identified in South Africa and the other first identified in the UK, are now spreading in the US. A member of President-elect Biden's COVID-19 task force said this morning that these variants could, and I quote, substantially increase the number of cases. I worry desperately that in the next 6 to 12 weeks, we're going to see a situation with this pandemic unlike anything we've seen yet to date. And that is really the challenge. I don't think most people realize yet. The challenge is to get people to understand this will happen. We are going to see a major increase in cases. The challenge is how many. We can't make the vaccine go much faster than it is right now. As far as how bad the next phase gets, it depends on how quickly we take action. As he puts it, the difference is going to be, are we going to react now or later? Do we put the brakes on after the car's wrapped around the tree, or do we try to put the brakes on before we leave the intersection? I don't believe that there is a single member of the DMPS team that is not aching to have all our students back in school 5 days a week, like normal. I am a proud member of the DMPS team, and I too, despite what you may have read in social media, desperately want our students safely back where they belong. I think we all understand the importance of frequent hand washing and how to properly wear a face mask, and that 6 feet is not adequate physical distancing. But if there's one thing I urge all of us to do, all of us, students, families, staff, our entire community, each of us, that will make the biggest difference in containing the spread of the virus, it is this: don't share air with those outside your household. We all share the responsibility for creating the conditions that will allow a safe return to some modicum of normal. Now is not the time to relax our precautions, but to double down on them. We have battles left to fight before we can win this war. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. And with nothing else, we will adjourn our meeting this evening. Thank you all for your time.